Helen Joseph Biography and the Anti-apartheid movement. Anti-apartheid campaigner, an officer of the Federation of South African Women and of the Congress of Democrats, who survived many years of banning and house arrest. Born Helen Beatrice May Fennell in Sussex, England, in 1905, passed away in Johannesburg, South Africa, on December 25, 1992. On August 9, 1956, 20,000 South African women of all races, from every region in South Africa, travelled to Pretoria to protest apartheid and the issuing of passes to black women. For a full 30 minutes, they stood in silence in the amphitheatre of the government union buildings with their fists raised in defiance. Then at 3:30 p.m, they sang a new anthem, directed at the Prime Minister, Johannesburg. "You have struck a rock," they sang. "You have tampered with the women, you shall be destroyed." The date of August 9, now celebrated annually in South Africa as National Women's Day, is seen as a high point in women's collective participation in the struggle against apartheid. Helen Joseph was 51 when she helped lead the march on the union buildings. For the next 30-odd years, she continued her commitment to the eradication of racism and injustice in South Africa. Helen Beatrice May Fennell was born in Sussex, England, of middle-class parents, in 1905. She learned of faraway places when her father, who was serving in World War I, sent pressed flowers to her and her brother, Frank, while he was stationed in Jerusalem and Bethlehem. Helen felt drawn to the Roman Catholicism of the private convent schools she attended, but her mother insisted that she be confirmed in the Anglican Church. Though Joseph had lost interest in religion by the time she left school, she would begin to attend church regularly during her second term of house arrest in the 1960s. Helen's father could only afford to send one of his children to university. Since Frank decided to go into business, Helen was able to attend King's College of the University of London, where she obtained a second-class honours degree. Unlike many of her peers, she does not seem to have seen marriage as the immediate goal. Instead, she determined to become a teacher and, because she had no degree, made plans to teach overseas, where she could work without professional qualifications. In 1928, Joseph arrived in Hyderabad, one of the largest princely states in India, to teach at the Mabubi School for Indian girls. In retrospect, Helen Joseph came to feel that the princes ruled tyrannically in Hyderabad, but at the time, she says, she absorbed very little of Indian politics despite the widespread passive resistance movement then being undertaken by Mohandas Gandhi's Indian National Congress. Joseph recalled that in Hyderabad we were encapsulated in our pleasant social life, but had I wanted to I could then have learned so much about the Indian fight for freedom and justice, so similar to the struggle which was to absorb me in South Africa later. While in India, she made friends with Indians, however, and this experience possibly helped to raise her consciousness about racial oppression once she arrived in South Africa. Helen left India in 1931 after a serious horseback riding accident cut short on her teaching activities. She headed for Durban, on the lush east coast of South Africa, where she knew an old university friend. Within months, 26-year-old Helen married Billy Joseph, a dentist who was 17 years her senior. For the next 8 years, Helen did not work. Her husband thought it inappropriate and spent her days befitting the white upper middle class, coming in contact with black South Africans only in their positions as domestic workers and gardeners. According to the Weekly Mail, Joseph was known as beautiful and flighty, leading a life of wining and dining and bridge parties. Later, Helen would acknowledge that both she and Billy had a number of love affairs. By the time World War II broke out in 1939, they were leading separatist lives. Billy soon joined the South African Dental Corps. Somewhat later, Helen applied to become a lieutenant in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force and moved from Durban to Pretoria, the executive capital of the Union. She joined the ranks of the Information Service, whose duty was to inculcate a liberal, tolerant attitude of mind in the women serving in the forces. Quote, "This was truly an astounding mission," recalled Joseph, "since the white women of the WAF were born and bred in a society which denied human rights to others on the grounds of color and race." This served as the beginning of Joseph's political education. That's where I learned, she said, because we had to lecture on current affairs and on politics, and in order to be able to lecture, I had to learn first. Then I began to see the facts, the facts about Bantu education, the facts of the discrimination, the facts of housing, and that began to worry me. I always had a bit of a social worker's conscience. That's where I started. She came to see how black children struggled for education and opportunity, and how black people, the vast majority of the population, had been forced off their land by whites. At war's end, Helen and Billy Joseph separated, though neither wanted a divorce, and she took a number of jobs directing community health centers, first in Johannesburg, and then in Cape Town. While managing the National War Memorial Health Foundation's community centers for the colored people of Cape Town, Joseph came to feel that all our social services were only alleviating the existing evils, not eradicating them. Our little islands of concern were not affecting the total situation. When the job of Secretary Director of the Medical Aid Fund of the Garment Workers Union in the Transvaal province became available, she saw it as an opportunity to be more effective, and jumped at the chance, starting work in Johannesburg in March 1951. It was in this job, through her professional, then personal, association with Solly Sachs, General Secretary of the predominantly female and non-racial Garment Workers Union, that Helen was introduced into left-wing politics.